Here with my nephew Liam Weed, who's 11 years old. And when I asked him what he knows about Venus, he basically rattled off the entire presentation that I'm about to give before even seeing it. And it's something I've been studying all week, and he already knew the answers to. So, Venus is my very earnest mother just served us nachos. So, Venus is the second of the terrestrial planets before Earth, and Earth sits between Venus and Mars. Mars is the god of war. Venus was the goddess of love. And you can see that there's a thick cloud of, in this case, sulfuric acid and other gases, but it has a high albedo, which is how reflective the surface is. Like an albedo for white snow, albedo for white snow is very high. And so it's a very reflective planet and bright. We'll talk about that. We can see here that Venus is the twin sometimes of Earth, just because of all the other planets. She's the most like us in mass and diameter and weight. But there's some things that are not similar, and we'll talk about those. But as you can see with this basketball player here, if we can dunk at 10 feet on Earth, you'd be able to dunk at 11 feet if you were on Venus, because it's 0.9 or 90% of gravity that is on the planet Earth. These are the numbers as far as the distance from the sun. You'll notice that Venus is about 30% closer to the sun than we are. And as far as diameter, we're very similar. You can see has more mass, but look at the 1 day for the Venus is longer than its year. So it basically has such a slow rotation on a clockwise spin that it completes its trip around the sun before it even completes its trip around itself. So unlike us, where our 24-hour day, they have a day that lasts let's see here, 243 days in Earth equivalent. The other thing to take note of here is the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So 96% of the atmosphere on Venus is carbon dioxide, and that has great repercussions on its ability to sustain life, if at all. It is farther away from the sun than Mercury, and yet hotter. Why is that? It's because of the CO2 here. And anything else? Just that it's eccentric. Well, we're going to look at its orbit, and we'll see how we're able to view Venus so easily. So some things that are unique to Venus is it is slow spinning on a clockwise rotation, and its day is longer than its year. Venus, like I said, is the hottest planet in the solar system, clocking in at 900 degrees Fahrenheit. And I should know Celsius, but as an American, I feel like I got robbed of that teaching. So I can tell you Fahrenheit, but not Celsius. Venus does not have any moons. I imagine because it's so close to the sun that any moons would have been stripped away by the gravity of the sun and not able to form. But I might be wrong about that. And Venus has no magnetic field of its own, just the solar wind and all the ions that are blowing across it, and because of its proximity to the sun. And Venus is the brightest object in the sky after the moon. Um, Anciently, you would have been able to see Venus, and especially if you had acute eyesight, you can make out the extreme crescent phase without a telescope. The Mesopotamians tracked Venus and understood that it was not two planets, because there were some ancient civilizations that would thought it was two different objects in the sky. Uh, but we'll see that it was one, but just traveling in a closer orbit to the sun than us. And Friday is tied to Venus. Viernes in Spanish, and again, Venus being the goddess of love. You can see the moon here with Venus to its, I guess, 4 o'clock, and then the sun having set. We're able to see it because it's orbiting at a bit of a tilt here, and so even when we don't see the sun, the the morning star or the evening star comes out, and we're able to see it. This is using the visible light spectrum only, as you can see on the bottom here. Venus, because it's closer to the sun, its orbit causes her to essentially be leading the sun, um, because it's got this clockwise or counterclockwise orbit. It's leading the sun for half the year, and it's called the morning star. And then it follows the sun in setting for the other half. Uh, and thus it's called the evening star. And in the Hebrew Bible, um, there's a scripture about how Lucifer was the son of the morning or star of the morning, and he fell. And the idea that this morning star passes behind and goes essentially for 50 days out of the year, you can't see it, and then rises up again as an evening star. They ascribed anciently significance to that fact. And then the 8 days where the planet is passing across our sun and it's thus not visible. Now we get to the atmosphere, and that the issue here is that CO2 as a molecule has for its wavelength, or its length, I should say, diameter, um, it matches up pretty much perfectly with the infrared light uh, wavelength, which I assume is going to be 400 nanometers per second to 800. It'll be around the 800 nanometers per second range, which is essentially allows that infrared heat to hit it, and it absorbs it and then holds it. That's why CO2 is a greenhouse gas, is because its length of the physical dimensions of its molecule matches the length of infrared. And I apologize for the noise. That would be my other nephew. And that's illustrated here. And then finally, using not the visible light spectrum and not the ultraviolet, but the radio waves, we're able to get an idea of what the planet looks like on the ground level. And you can see um, there's volcanic activity taking place there. And then the final thing I wanted to talk about was just how, again, the planet was known anciently, but in order to understand truly its orbit within a heliocentric view of the solar system, took real creativity and also discipline. And so Galileo wanted to communicate to Kepler that he had figured it out, but he also didn't want to like give it away and have Kepler then claim that he had come up with it. So what Galileo did was to create an anagram in Latin, which says Cynthiae figuras amilutar mater amorum. The mother of love, who is Venus, imitates the shape of Cynthia, which is the Latin, I guess, in Rome would have been the moon. So he's basically saying Venus does crescent shapes just like the moon. But he scrambled all those letters up and instead spoke in Latin and said, "These are now too young to be read by me," which doesn't make sense. I guess that was the point. That way, when Kepler did kind of figure it out, Galileo was like, "Hey, what do you think? Like, I knew this before, and I wrote you this letter this way. That way, I could have my cake and eat it too." And that concludes our slide show about Venus. Thank you.